Welcome everybody, thank you for joining us. We are going to have a little chatter about ESG, what it costs to be sustainable, finance and funding in the heady, lofty world of ESG. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Emily Newman. I am co-founder of NewDog PR. We're a strategic PR company with a focus on the investment arm of the hotel sector, hospitality sector. I have a power panel of ladies here who are brilliant in every way. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because otherwise I'll just get it wrong. So, Sarah, please start us off.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to echo that. This is it's a pleasure to be with you. You all look fantastic, I think. Just lovely. So, yes, I'm Sarah Duncan. My background is hospitality, but for the last 15 years or so, I've been running my own consultancy. And in the last 4 or 5 years, that has been focused very much on sustainability and ESG. I'm a B Corp, and I've written a couple of books about sustainability.
Thank you very much, Louise.
Lovely, yeah, thank you. So I'm Louise, and my background equally is in hospitality, and I now work for Keep Britain Tidy, the environmental charity who manage Green Key, which is an eco-label accreditation program for the hospitality sector. It's an international label. We manage it here in England. We accredit hotels, restaurants, conference centres, holiday parks. We provide a framework to get them on their sustainability journey. And that's me.
Lovely, thank you. Ellie.
My name is Eljesa. I am in hospitality. I manage the Zetter Townhouse in Marylebone and have been in hospitality for almost 10 years now.
And you were at the Doyle Collection previously.
I was previously at Doyle Collection.
Done a research. Okay, so we've got an operator and then a couple of practitioners. Audience participation is actively encouraged, so you can wait to the end and ask a question, or just raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you if something crops up as we're talking about it. But the idea of this session is to try and sort of frame ESG on a macro level, and then drill down into the motivations, the reasoning, and the funding elements behind it as well. Do chip in with any contributions. So I'd like to start. I think it's quite important to maybe have a discussion around the motivation for sustainability. We all know there are an enormous amount of players within the hotel stack, whether that be investors, developers, operators, owners, suppliers, and not forgetting the guests as well. So, Sarah, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. Where do you think, and there's no right or wrong answer as we were discussing, but from your point of view, where does that motivation for the sustainability drive come from?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm noticing, so I've been talking to hotels about sustainability for a number of years, and for very good reasons, I think a lot of hotels have had to put it on the back burner because there's been some very pressing issues that have come along. But now we're seeing, to be honest with you, we're seeing the shit getting real with hotels, and it's predominantly being the shift, I think, is the corporate market. That's what's happened in the last year. So what we're seeing now is that if you rely on corporates and corporate business, you are now part of their supply chain. And corporates are now scrutinising their supply chain. And if you don't meet the criteria that they expect, you won't even get to pitch for or tender for the business, let alone win it. So if you're talking about motivation, I think it's switched from, oh, we really want to do this because it's morally the right thing and it's the right thing to do, to, oh no, we actually have to do this. The commercial imperative has now taken over, and I think that's a good thing, and I think that's helping push a lot of words into more action.
Okay, that's brilliant, thank you. Louise, would you agree, or do you have sort of different views on motivating factors?
I agree, and I think the hotels that we've spoken to echo exactly what Sarah has said. Corporates are beginning to demand to see more sustainable practices in hotels, not just from the corporate sector as well, but just leisure guests overall. Guests are beginning to look at the eco-credentials of the hotels that they're staying at. So I think it plays a massive role in the motivation for the hotels themselves to implement these practices.
And Ellie, as an operator, would you echo that? Is the demand coming from corporate guests? Is it coming from or leisure or your? Because the owners, the original owners of Zetter were hugely into. That's not the right way of putting it, but they were really motivated by sustainable principles when they built the business. So yeah, what are you seeing?
So with the Zetter, it's yes, the original founders were absolutely hugely into sustainability, and since it being acquired, we've taken that and developed on that, done more into that, and it is a demand that it is more prominent with corporate guests because it's a demand, it's a request, it's even the rates that people are willing to pay as a corporate will vary on the credentials that you have. For us at the Zetter, because it is something we do generally and are into generally, we found that actually it became quite a plus when speaking to people and discussing these matters, because we already had the foundation for that, and it was just, running with it in the last year itself. So many things have changed, and what people expect have changed. And we were able to, build on the foundation that we had and develop that.
Good stuff. You've all sort of touched on the. Should we call it an apocalypse? Let's call it. Might be too much of a term, but there's a lot going on in hotel land at the moment. There's rising labour costs, there's rising supply costs, there's different demand factors and influences. As a hotelier, or indeed anyone within that hotel stack, where do you begin to prioritise any kind of ESG fundamentals and practices when you've got real operational challenges like finding staff? Louise, can I come to you? Otherwise we're going to go bum, bum, bum the same way. Let's mix it up.
No, you're right, Emily. It is a challenge. And a lot of the hotels that we speak to at the moment are really struggling with staff, with supply chain issues. So it can slip down the ladder a little bit. But I think what we would say is they need to sort of look at a more rounded approach, in that if it slides down, your costs are escalating in a way that perhaps is not sustainable for them, in the long term. They need to be looking at how they can measure what they're using to be able to save resources, especially in light of current energy price crisis. If you're not measuring what you're using, you're not going to be able to manage what you're using, and they could be losing money, on that side of it, without really sort of recognising it. But the hotels are struggling with external challenges beyond their force, but we do find that a lot of them do find a way to prioritise still moving forward with sustainability. That's
reassuring. Would you echo those thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, who'd want to be a hotelier at the moment? I mean, it's so difficult. One of the analogies I quite like, it was a lady called Christiana Figueres, who wrote a book called The Future We Choose, and she kind of used the analogy of an A&E triage nurse. And I think what we've got with hospitality and many other businesses as well at the moment is that things like Brexit, COVID, some of these crises could be looked at by that triage nurse as an acute condition. And as such, they need that immediate attention. They need the emergency treatment. However, we still have this underlying chronic condition, which is climate change and all of the human consequences of climate change. And that's not going away. So somehow people need to find out how to treat all of those. So treat those firefighting, those emergency kind of acute things, but recognise that goes hand in hand with this chronic underlying condition, and try and find a way of tackling it all. And I do think, with things like energy, for example, if you're not looking at energy efficiency at the moment from a sustainability point of view, I'm sure you're looking at it from a cost point of view. So it's very complex, but my main thing is try and bring ESG into the very fabric of your business, and don't treat it like a project, because if it's a short-term project, it's likely to have short-term results.
Is that what you're...
If I could
Sorry,
just add
go on.
on to that, if I
Yeah.
may, it's a bit of a double-edged sword as well in terms of recruitment for hotels. They're struggling with the staff. As we said, corporates are looking for more sustainable hotels, guests are looking for more sustainable hotels, people are also looking for more sustainable companies to work for. So if ESG falls off of the priority list, you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit with recruitment as well. I don't know if you find that.
I was just
at the
going to
Zetter.
pick up on that exact topic, actually. Echoing what you've said, it's, people want to work in a company with people that are looking at, ESG. And obviously when you have the discussion in an interview, you're not outlining in depth what it is and what you're doing, but people do ask the question now, what are you doing on sustainability? How are you caring for the environment? And actually, as you said, if it is part of the fabric of what you are doing, then it becomes normalized like every other thing you do. So as an operator, the same way, your team knows how to sell a room, for example, their core should also be, what are we doing on sustainability? It should be a normality within what we are doing overall, rather than it being a pet project. Because as soon as you do make it a project, it's, okay, great, but we've got more pressing things to do. We don't have enough staff. Things are too busy. And the more excuses you give yourself, the more you let it go.
And a project, I suppose, by definition, has a start and an end point, doesn't it? And you're all hurtling towards that end point, and then, some sort of great big hurrah, we've done it.
We've done it, yeah.
There isn't a we've done it. I think it's really important at this stage to break out the three letters within ESG. We have already gravitated towards the sustainability element, which is right and proper. It's the first letter. But there are two others. So the social and governance, I think it would be worthwhile touching on those. I was minded when you were talking about recruitment, that social element actually, and that governance element. People do want to work in an organisation that's fair, that's equal, that has opportunities. So should we talk a little bit about the social bit? Who would like to start? I don't mind.
I would just say, in my mind, sustainability and ESG are essentially interchangeable.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is I know sustainability conjures up, I think, in the minds of people, the green stuff. But if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations, they cover all of the societal stuff as well. So, I think it doesn't really matter what term you use, but the whole point is that there is an interconnection between the environment and humans, and climate change and the consequences to humans. And, a lot of people say we're saving the planet. The planet's going to be fine. The planet will go on a lot longer than us. We're the immature species here. It will go on in a different way, and we'll probably take a whole bunch of species with us. But what we're doing here is we're looking at being sustainable for ourselves, for human beings. So I think, rather than separate the things out, it's just the basic thing is how are we protecting a healthy environment, how are we protecting healthy people, and that's our communities, our staff, our customers, all our stakeholders, and how are we doing that within a framework that has compliance involved in it and has better business standards.
Very good point. And on frameworks, I'm going to ask you, Louise, to just briefly explain the framework, because we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? It's just, at some point, it sort of appears baffling how you sort of approach ESG, and frameworks help considerably just with a starting point. Can you talk to us a little bit about the framework that you have, what it's called, and how it works?
So, a hotel starting on their sustainability journey, it can be quite daunting, not knowing which way to go, where to begin. Green Key do provide a framework that you can work with. It's broken down into 13 categories. That includes things like environmental management, waste, washing and cleaning staff involvement, guest involvement. There's quite a few more. And it just provides you with a starting point for each section, and it incorporates the whole hotel, so all of your operations. The most important thing, I think, from our side is the environmental education aspect. So it's educating your staff so that it's running throughout the hotel in every department. It's not just one department that's saving paper here or one department that's turning the light switches off there when they're not in use. It's running seamlessly throughout your hotel. And it's also about showing that to your guests, what you're doing, so that you're showing the sustainable initiatives and practice that you've got going on in the hotel, showcasing that if you get the accreditation, if you've got that green key, you've got the plaque on the wall, you've got the certificate on the wall, you've got the details on your website, talking to your staff, to your guests when they arrive, telling them that you have pillows made from recycled plastic bottles, or that you've got beehives, in your garden, and you're using all the food that's being served in your restaurant is being grown on site or within a 20-mile radius, things like that. Guests are really interested to know what hotels are doing, and I think the framework that we provide with the Green Key accreditation, it gives you something to work towards, and the hotels have to constantly improve as well. It's not just you get the accreditation, you keep it for life. No, you get it 1 year, and then next year you have to work a little bit harder to build on what you're doing, to constantly improve, to show that you're really working in a sustainable format 100% throughout.
Ellie, do you think guests are willing to pay for this? Are they willing to pay a percentage increase for a hotel that is very obviously executing sustainable principles?
I think momentarily we're still in a phase where people are willing to pay slightly more for it, but we are moving towards an era where it will be very soon expected. Mm-hmm. It will no longer be a luxury, it will be a demand, and it will be something that, as hoteliers, we need to continue working towards normalizing, because that's the route that we're headed down now.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose there'll be push-pull factors there. If as a hotel you're not ready at the point that the guests turn around and expect it, then that's a challenge, right, in terms of process and getting yourself in
but
line.
I think just on that point, there's this thing about luxury hotels and budget hotels, and I think if you look at the sort of normal motivation for somebody, they're looking for, it's normally kind of location, cost and quality. And I think that works sort of, if in a budget hotel you expect the quality to be slightly less. I think for most people it's just now sustainability is another factor. Mm-hmm. So whether you're a luxury hotel or a budget hotel, look at your location is not going to change, your quality is not going to change. If you're the most sustainable, you're likely to have a competitive advantage. And just on that, we talked about the corporate market, which is very cut and dried earlier, but we're now seeing this with the leisure traveller as well. And Google and their whole eco-certified searches now, that's a big conversation going on in hotels at the moment. And that's again where things like Green Key come in, because they recognise Green Key as a standard, so that helps you get up the Google rankings. So there's lots of different elements of this going on, but I think that's an indication of the leisure traveller as well.
Louise, with Green Key, do you have to, presumably, there's a lot of energy and effort that goes into creating that framework. You haven't just sort of gone, well, I'll have a bit of this and a bit of this, in order to get it to Google recognised. So how do you sort of begin to create that framework?
That's done by Green Key International. So, as I mentioned before, it's an international program, and they review the criteria every 5 years, so it's constantly sort of kept fresh and up to date. Mm-hmm. They work with experts and scientists, I believe, to sort of go through the framework to see what we can use at the hotels to keep it relevant. We've just updated the criteria in January this year, so it's updated now for the next 5 years. And one of the sort of key elements, I suppose, that became part of our imperative criteria this year was that hotels need to measure their carbon footprint. That previously was just a guideline criteria, so it wasn't imperative to get the award. This year it's become imperative, so with Green Key have sort of indicated that that's a real key factor, that hotels need to be looking at their overall carbon footprint to be able to receive the accreditation, which I think is an interesting one to move to.
Do you think there are various tax breaks and funding programs in existence at the moment? I believe Australia and Germany have such schemes. Do you, Sarah? No, just don't ask me this question. Do you think hypothetically, we might see something like that in the UK, and if so, good, bad?
Who knows
Yeah.
with the current government?
Well, they might do it one day and then take it away the next day.
Let's say hypothetically, we are still, as a country, we are committed to net zero by 2050. Legally, we are still committed to that, or we were as of 5 minutes ago. That might have changed, but that's still the government stance. So inevitably, one would assume that in order to get there, bad corporate behaviour will be penalised and good corporate behaviour will be incentivised. That seems to be the obvious state of affairs and is happening, as you say, in other countries. So, yes, I believe that that is the way we're going.
Very good. Thank you for not just saying, I'm not answering that question. Ellie, should we have ESG members on the executive board? So we now have chief technology officers. Will we see a lot more? I appreciate in a lot of organisations, I think Accor has a sustainability executive on the board. Will we see more of that? Should we see more of that?
I think we will see more of that. Whether we should see more of that is a different sort of question altogether. From my perception, it's a case of having someone in a role as a sustainability executive kind of defies the point of it being done on the ground itself, because it's another role where someone comes in and you're told then how to do things and how things run. At the Zetter, we pride ourselves on being very sustainable. And then having sort of, it all comes from the involvement from the team, what we do as a group, what we do from the bottom up, essentially.
As opposed
everyone
to
is involved in that. Mm-hmm. And we take great pride in that. So having an external person or another person in that role that essentially and potentially has never operated makes it difficult to then implement things that the team on the ground know very well and feel and live and breathe on a day-to-day basis. It's, we speak about ESG at the Zetter because it's something that we are passionate about and something that we do and something that is part of our core and our foundation, rather than because we've been told to.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yes, I believe that will be the case. I don't think it has to be.
Go on, Sarah.
Can I just say on that, I think in an ideal world, you shouldn't need to have the role of an ESG or a sustainability person, because every single person in the organisation is doing it and every single person on the board lives and breathes it. And it's coming from the top down, it's coming from the bottom up, it's coming in sideways. In an ideal world, we shouldn't have individual people on this. It should be part of everybody's job description. It should be linked to their KPIs, their bonuses. It should be in every conversation, and every decision should be viewed through a sustainability lens. And that's the utopia, I think.
What about, you mentioned KPIs, collecting and measuring the sort of various bits and pieces of data that sort of demonstrate where you are on that journey. Is that something that a framework could help with and sort of puts in place? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the Green Key framework, for example, on water, would be to measure the flow of the taps and showers in your hotel. So we require 75%, at least 75% of the showers, for example, in the hotel to be running at less than 9 litres a minute, and the taps to be less than 8 litres a minute. If you're not measuring these things, you just don't know where you're at, for example. And until you begin to measure, you can't manage the resources that you're using. Not only the flow, we ask the hotels to look at the usage on a monthly basis, minimum on a monthly basis, to see the amount of water being used, the amount of waste being disposed of, the amount of energy being used. So yeah, managing is a real key starting point.
Lovely, thank you. Does anybody have any questions at this stage in the game? Oh, we do. Sorry, and I've thrown Phoebe because she hasn't got a microphone. 2 seconds, the microphone's coming to you. Thank you.
Hello. I represent a local trade association and I speak to a lot of people generally about green schemes. And what the pushback is it tends to be one size fits all. And people have basically left a lot of schemes because it was too much. It was, say, one person running a B&B, they couldn't cope with dealing with all the requirements all the time. And they just pulled out of everything. And to be blunt, there is a certain amount of pushback from the public of they don't know, is this scheme better than this scheme? What does this mean? I could put a sticker in my window saying anything. Do you know what I mean? I could make my own scheme up tomorrow. And it's just, is there kind of a push to get some kind of, this is not the best scheme, but a more publicly recognised scheme? Because I don't wish to be rude, but I'd never heard of Green Key before today. Yeah. And I'm interested in it. So if you're trying to sell it to the public that this is what you should be looking for, I just feel like that, yeah, it might be what tips it, but is, for example, there's Considerate Hoteliers, there's the Visit Britain scheme and so on. And I think the public are just getting confused. They want to do the right thing, but who knows what that is. And they don't know what the standards are required for the different things. And between, like, say, self-catering or a B&B or a hotel, I'll tell you now, for example, measuring all my taps, it's not going to happen, you know. And it's just, it makes people look at that and go, I'm not even going to bother. And that obviously isn't what you want.
Emily, could I?
So it's finding that kind of different size fits all.
Yeah, great question.
Could I
Yes, please do.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to hand over to you. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said that, you know, there's no one size fits all. There isn't one size that fits all with this, because every sort of business is unique. And I would encourage you, you know, you have to want to do this. I think, you know, we talked about motivation at the beginning of this. That motivation does need to come from somewhere from within. And I think once you have decided you want to do the best that you can do for your business, it's about looking at what the options are and what's feasible for you. Because the truth is, doing something is better than doing nothing. The frameworks that are in place, and things like Green Key, you might not be aware of them yet, but they are very accessible. You might not be able to do everything in there, but they will give you something to work towards. So once you have the motivation to want to be better, have a look at the different programs that are out there and understand your customers. You know, customers, there are shades of green when it comes to customers. Not all customers are as green and militant as others. Ask your customers what's important to them, and then find a scheme that fits with where they're at in their journey, but also help educate them. Start on your own journey, but you're right, there is no one size that fits all.
Louise, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. As you've both said, there is no one size fits all. There are lots of labels out there, and it's hard to find the way through. I understand that many people in this country haven't heard of Green Key. It's part of our mission at the moment to change that. The program's only been running here for a few years. We've had 2 years of COVID in between, so it's been on, you know, a bit of a pause. It is an international program. It's recognised by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council and endorsed by the UN World Tourism Organization. So it does have a lot of credibility behind it. As Sarah said, it is accessible. All of the criteria is freely available on the website. We do offer that. It's run by the Foundation of Environmental Education internationally, who are based in Denmark, a not-for-profit scheme. Keep Britain Tidy is a not-for-profit environmental charity.
But I think also there's that thing of, you know, we talked about the social side of this. Don't forget that there are things that you can do in your communities. There are things that you can do for your employees. There's that whole social side. Everyone can do that. Yeah. Everyone can reach out to their communities and do something from the S point of view. And going back to the environmental point of view, if these frameworks are too overwhelming, then just break it down and say, how am I heating my place? How am I lighting my place? How am I cooking my food? Break it down into the main areas that you know you're using energy and just look at how you can reduce them a bit. Waste, water, just break it down into little things and do what's possible for you to do. It will then start to become part of the culture of the business, and then you might find that you are ready to do some sort of a scheme.
Just take that step and start, isn't it? Just find one
get
area
started.
to start with.
I do appreciate, though, as we sort of said at the beginning, the enormity of it, if you're sort of staring at it with day-to-day everything. How do you, as a business, I appreciate it's in the fabric, but how do you as a business stay motivated? And also, do you use a framework to guide you for sort of new things and, any new legislation that needs to come through?
So as far as, staying motivated, it's how does one stay motivated for something that is a normality to them? So it's part of what we do every single day. We measure these things, we look at these things, even without being, part of a program. It's something we internally do ourselves. We have a great team of people who keep track of all of the updates, all of, things are changing every day now, or even twice a day. Depends on the mood. But it's keeping track of that and then having those discussions. Okay, what do we do next? Yes, we've nailed this. This is part of what we do. What are we moving towards? What is our next step? And we do that genuinely together. And there is, members that are more into it. It's more of what they're interested in doing and more into the core of what they do. But it's having those people and with those interests and skill sets and coming together.
Yeah. I bet there's a lot of resources, individuals within the organisations, like you say, who with different skills, different talents that you can draw out, motivate. I just wondered, on the investment side, do you think taking ESG, taking a sensible and responsible approach to it, makes you more attractive to investors and funders? Obviously. Yes, absolutely. So I work with some venture capitalists, and this is top of their agenda at the moment. It really is. If you're, buzzwords like value creation and exit planning, ESG is what they're building into all of this. I hope it's genuine and all the rest of it, like I do with anyone embarking on this. But yes, if you are looking for investment, this is something that will crop up. And I wonder, Ellie, when the Zetter groups had new ownership about 18 months ago?
March of last year.
Last year. I wonder how important those fundamentals of sustainability were to your new owners.
So I joined post March of last year. So I'm not inherently sure of those stages. But seeing what we do now and, any future ventures that we discuss, it's a core part of what is being discussed. The key thing to remember is avoiding, we can all sit here and say we're the greenest of the green and we're fantastic and, but actually at the core of it, what are we doing and what are we looking to do? And what do we invest in, and how does that, with what we currently have and the product that we currently have, how does that tie in together on an ESG aspect with multiple other things, of course, but how do we link that and ensure that we're pulling this through regardless of where we're headed or where we're looking at in terms of physical property? How do we ensure that this is the core of what we take through with us? It is, it is just very important to remember that we don't miss that and just say that we're doing that for the sake of the fact that we're doing that. Yes, the current properties might, but then just because the current properties do, the next 10 properties may not. We cannot then say, yeah, as a group we do.
Okay.
Because that then loses its value.
Sure, understood. Questions? 5 minutes, questions. Microphone's coming. Thank you.
I would love for the panel to speak to grants.
Yes, we're linked. I was just about to ask about loans, green loans and grants. Sarah, have you got any insight on that?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Green loans and grants?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that question. I don't know a huge amount about them. I know that lots of banks are offering them, and I think they're specifically aimed at SMEs. I think from the limited amount I know about it, that yes, if you are wanting to invest in some sort of capital expenditure that helps with an environmental framework, then yes, it is possible to apply for them. I would imagine something like solar panels would be something that would fall into that. But again, with all of these things, I'd be really looking at what you're investing in and what the return, not necessarily the financial return on it would be, but also how exactly it's going to be aiding your specific project. So I know they're available, but beyond that, I don't know too much. But really think about what you're looking at those loans to actually achieve.
Have you?
I was just going to say, I know of a few local schemes that have run by local councils. I think they're sort of trying to encourage businesses to work towards eco-accreditation, for example, as part of the council's net zero targets. But as a wider scheme, I don't really know of many that are readily available. We can only hope that more will come through.
I think actually what was quite interesting about the title of this session, which was kind of funding sustainability, and I kind of was thinking, God, I hope no one comes along thinking, oh, they're going to tell us where the magic sustainability fund tree is, because as far as I'm aware, there isn't a magic fund tree for this. It's about, and actually if you're even looking at it from that point of view, I would say maybe your motivation isn't quite at the heart of it yet. I think the question is, how do I resource sustainability?
Absolutely. I don't think there is a pipeline. I don't think there is a direct line to picking up a phone somewhere and saying, I'd like a loan, please, for, this schemes exist, frameworks exist, and it's about being part of that in order to get additional funding, making yourself more attractive to investors, making yourself more attractive to guests. It's all sort of part. It's not.
It's going back, I think, to that, and it might seem quite sort of dramatic to a lot of people, but it's going back to sustainability means to exist in the future, and there is a lot of talk now about this being the license to do business in the future. So, in terms of this investment question, it is investing in the future. It's not like saying I'm investing in a new spa. It's about investing in that license to do business in the future.
Was there another question? Yes. It's got a plethora of questions. Bear with me. Yes.
To answer the last question, your first point of call should always be your local council's economic development plan, which will outline the broad brushstrokes and should point you to any specific aids that they will help local businesses. They do it for the residential sector, they should be doing it for the commercial sector. And one of the funders I know that's always been sympathetic to this field is Triodos Bank, which was based in Bristol. They're a Netherlands bank. But if you want to start Googling, look at green funds, impact investors, all of those things. I suspect if they're on board, the major high street banks will have departments dealing with this. And I was at a conference last week where Save and Prosper doing the indices, they had a variety of good speakers on all day. But one of the best quotes I've heard from any public figure was from the chairman of B&Q at the time, who was a skeptic and got converted, and then started ringing his peers in the other retailers and big businesses. And whenever he got through to a board director, which he did often, of course, if he found a skeptic, he said, "Which ecosystem are you in?" But there is a lot of help out there now, more than ever. And the big banks are doing something. It's not always clear what, though. I
think I agree with you. If you Google, if you search for green loans, you will find most of the banks offering them to SMEs, certainly now. Triodos is great. They're a B Corp.
Lovely, and many thanks for your insight.
So you probably all have a different perspective on this, but you know, the starting point, there's so many things that one can do. It looks like a mountain. Do you predominantly see people looking outside of the business to get a consultant, kick the project off, do an evaluation, or maybe the Zetter has a different perspective on this? It started in-house, really dedicating, you know, our limited people resources at the moment to get those projects started. We, you know, are looking to start our journey, and it really seems like there's a million things you can do. So just trying to understand a little bit more about, you know, what you've seen from businesses you've been working with.
Great question. Louise, do you want to kick off?
So we've seen a mixture. Yeah, some hotels that are ready to start their journey, they know where they want to go, they've already got their targets and their strategies in place, and others that don't have a clue where to begin, and they do look for external help. They might approach us and ask about Green Key, about the accreditation, have a look through the framework and realise that actually they need some help to be able to get there. We do have some lovely consultancy companies that we partner with who do help hotels to get there and sort of put them on their journey. You can find all the details on. Yeah.
I think it is a really complex area, and certainly when we look at the environmental side of it, some of it is quite scientific. And so if you don't have that capability within the organisation, then I think a good starting point is to find somebody who does have that knowledge to get you started on your journey. We were talking about this earlier though, and one of the advice I would give, and I go into companies, is find someone who simplifies it and doesn't make it more complicated, because I think there are people out there that, you know, want to drag this thing out and make it really complicated. Get someone who just breaks it down, makes it really simple, gets you to understand the different scopes, the greenhouse gas protocol scopes, that gets you to understand those your energy usage, but also your scope 3, which is your supply chain, and that can get you, sustainability isn't about knowing all the answers, it's about asking the right questions of all of your kind of suppliers and stakeholders. And so if you need some help, get someone to help you ask the right questions.
I like that. Okay. We're sort of hurtling towards the end of our session, but fear not, because the lovely Louise and the delightful Sarah will be over yonder in the social business space, no less, at 11:45 tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
So if you come back tomorrow.
Yes, or just stay here, however you feel you want to.
We also have the ESG hub on the first floor.
Yes.
With lots of
so there is advice
sustainability
galore. Please make the most of it. To finish, I would like you, and it's like we're linked, this front row and my questioning, because I would like to ask you each for a top tip for a hotelier. Where do they start? What are they going to do? So a short and sweet answer. Ellie, how would you suggest a top tip? What would you suggest?
When you first start looking at ESG, it can appear extremely overwhelming. So my tip is ask around, ask your network, ask for help and advice, but also break it down. Look at the core of it and what is the most important thing for you to start with, and start there. Avoid trying to do everything at once.
Wise words. Louise.
Yeah, I would say to start looking at your resources and begin to measure. Establish a baseline of where you're at using your utilities, your water, your waste, your energy. Start measuring, have a look at those figures so that you can know how to improve to lower your
Thank
use.
you. Sarah, top tip.
You can't manage what you don't measure, so absolutely get those baseline emissions, so you understand those, so you've got something to work on for reduction. But my actual top tip is remember the human beings in your business. Whether you've got 5 humans or 5,000 humans, if you educate and engage those human beings, you will change the culture of your business. And then every single human in your business will be stopping and thinking and saying, is there a greener way of doing this? Is there a more charitable, is there a kinder, is there a more responsible way of doing this? If you change that, then you properly build a sustainable culture.
Well, that is marvellous, and what a fitting end.